Welcome to the Elite BSC podcast, where our entire focus is helping commercial janitorial contractors succeed. You want a growing company, a thriving team, and healthy profits, and we are here to help. My name is Jordan Tong. I'm the founder of Elite BSC, a company dedicated to helping janitorial companies grow and thrive. I also serve as CEO and one of the owners of France Building Services. France is a janitorial company employing nearly 600 people. Since 2007, we grew from 1.5 million to more than 20 million in annual revenue and built what I think is one of the best teams in the world. The goal of Elite BSC in this podcast is to give owners in the industry a vision of where their company can be and the information and tools to get there. I want to share what I have learned over the years to make this a reality for you. Welcome to the Elite BSC podcast, where we're trying to help commercial janitorial leaders and business owners get better at what they do and build companies that are successful, that are thriving, that are a blessing to people, that are profitable, and give you life instead of enslaving you to your organization. So that's our goal, is to help bring that about. So today I want to talk about profit sharing with our managers. One of the things that anybody who's been involved in our Elite BSC group will know is that I have been pretty transparent and pretty open about our financials and performance here at our own organization. There's just a level of financial transparency that we've just kind of had for a long time. And it's not just with our Elite BSC group that I've done that. But within my own cleaning company, France Building Services, we share that financial information with some of our key people in the organization. And historically, we were not doing that, and we made some changes, et cetera. So what I wanted to do is I want to walk you through maybe where we used to be as we were thinking about compensating managers, and maybe how we were with financials and that sort of thing, and how that evolved over the years, and how we began to compensate our managers a bit different. And I suspect that some of the challenges that we had early on, or maybe some of the things that I think we were doing wrong, are also things that I think some in my audience may be not doing as well as they could be, to put that nicely. I think we can do a better job leading our managers, and part of that is developing compensation structures that are good for them and good for the business. And I think there's some principles we can think about that may help us. In your context may be different, and it likely is, and so it's not going to look the same across the board. But I think some of these principles will apply. So if I rewind the clock back 15 years ago, 16 years ago, something like that, our company now, we'll do between $20 and $21 million in total revenue this year. But if I go back to 2007, when I joined the company, we were doing maybe $1.5 million in revenue at that time. And so during those, $2, $3, $4 million that season there, the compensation structure for our managers, and when I talk about managers here in this context, I'm thinking of field managers that are overseeing the cleaners, and I'm also thinking of, if you're a small company, maybe like an operations director. If you're a bigger company, like a branch manager, ops manager, that sort of thing. And so early on, we had, at the time, we called it an area manager, who sort of dealt with customers and did the day-to-day stuff, interactions with customers. Then we had what we called area supervisors that worked at night, overseeing the cleaners. And I think that's the way a lot of companies were set up, and are set up as they're growing and trying to figure this, all this stuff out. And so what we would do with them is we had a base salary that we paid everybody. It just depended on how long you've been there, and if you were an area manager or the area supervisor position, paid a little bit differently. And you had a base salary, and back then, it was almost 20 years ago. It's a bit lower than they are now. And what we would do is we would also pay bonuses once a year, maybe occasionally twice a year. And they would usually come towards the end of the year around Christmas. And it was really just kind of willy-nilly. So I specifically remember, we would go down through the list of all the managers and all the cleaners that had been with us for, 5+ years. And we just start talking about, okay, what do we want to do for this manager? What about this manager? What about this manager? And we look at what we did the previous year, and you never want to go down from the previous year. And so, anyway, it was fine, I think, and we were doing our very best to treat our people well. But I think there's a downside that goes along with this, in that our compensation plans weren't really driving the kind of behavior that we wanted to see happen amongst our management team. And we didn't really know that at the time. We were sort of figuring this out along the way, but in hindsight, you can see that a bit, is we were not putting things in place from a comp package for people that pushed them in a direction to make not only them successful, but us more successful. And in many ways, it made performance not as good as it could have been. And it probably bred some frustration from time to time in those managers. So one of the things we started changing over time is we started allowing our field managers to have a bit more interaction with the customers. And then we started expanding a bit, so we had a couple of branch managers and a lot of field managers. And so I had been getting some consulting help from somebody else, and we were probably $5 million at the time when this was going on, $5 million in total revenue. And we started implementing a profit sharing program with our field and ops managers. And basically we had 3 branches at the time when we started doing this. So like we were in 3 different locations. They none of them were very far away from one another, and one of them was actually really small. And essentially what we would do is we would create a budget for that branch. We call these branch boards. And so at each branch location, there was board members of that branch. And so that was usually the branch manager and also the field managers, okay? And each of them had a percentage of how much of the profit sharing they would get. So the branch manager gets a big chunk of it because they're ultimate responsibility, and it was a decent part of their pay. And so they were at like 50% of the total profit sharing would go to the branch manager. And then it would be, let's say there was, 5 other field managers. Each of those would be eligible for 10%. And so what we would do is we would set a profit goal for that branch. And initially, the first time that we did this, our profit goal, it was an annual goal. And however much they beat that goal, we would give the board 50% of that excess. So let's say the goal was $100,000 in profit at that branch location, and they made $150,000. Well, $25,000, which is half of that, would go to the branch board and then be split along the percentage lines. Now, we very quickly realized after 1 year that it was a year was too long to wait to do profit sharing payouts. And the reason it was too long, particularly for those individuals, is that it was really hard to connect what they were doing on a day-to-day basis to that payout because it seemed so far in the future. And I think we have to be realistic with ourselves, thinking about, I think there's different levels of team members that we can have, that their time period of when they're eligible for certain compensation, that time period of what's acceptable, I think, is greater or lesser depending on the role. So we ended up moving that to quarterly, where we did those payouts once a quarter, and we had an annual goal, and then we split it up into 4 quarterly goals, and we started getting a little bit better and a little bit better at that. And it honestly went pretty well. Like, it was pretty motivating. Some of those numbers got pretty good, and people were making a bit more money, but they were also motivated to have better performing branch operations. And we started seeing some an upward trend in our profitability during this time period. But there were some downsides to this, and we started to see those a little bit as time went on, and because there was a couple things that we were doing in addition to doing the branch board. We were also doing paying out commission on project work, and so and this sort of all came to a head around COVID, when the economy and what doing business looked like sort of got flipped upside down for a period of time. And it became really profitable for our managers to go out and sell this project work that was highly profitable in the short term and was really like boosting profits in the short term. But we found that we were, well, a couple things. One, we didn't anticipate the level of payout we were going to have to do. And this is not because we're against paying our people good money. I mean, we had some area managers making $80,000-$90,000 during this period of time, and that's cool, and it was great, and it actually really blessed some of them. But that creates an issue where anytime somebody gets a certain salary spot, it's really hard to move backwards. And what we ended up finding is, particularly with this project work, is we were incentivizing going after all of these one-time type jobs, and we were not emphasizing the most important pieces of that management process, which was taking care of the customers and the ongoing contract work. And so we started to slide away from that a little bit, and we began to let me back up here. One other thing that made this a little bit more complicated is it's just really difficult to budget profitability at the branch level, and there are, just in terms of who's responsible for what, and the losing one customer, whether or not it's the team's fault, could really just tank the budget for the entire year, which we had happen, which then creates some frustration. It's like, hey, you guys didn't bid this right, or we lost it for no fault of our own, and now we're out bonuses, etc. So that was a downside to it as well. We also had some incentives that we didn't realize what kind of behavior they would drive. And so, those were a couple of things that gave us pause. And also, all it did, we started focusing on mission and our vision and things that were important to us. But at the end of the day, we were only measuring profitability, and that's what we were paying on. And so I think we were moving very much in the right direction, because we want to, honor the reaping and sowing principle, and if people perform well and they execute and they're leading things, we want them to share in the rewards. I think that's right and just in those cases. I think that's a good thing. But I think we need to be balanced in that as well. And so as we've evolved a bit, we've maintained this sort of profitability thing, and now we have a bonus structure that a piece of that bonus, and I think it's got a couple of scales on it, is tied to profitability. But then there's other pieces of it that are tied to your relationships with your customers and the satisfaction of our customers and the leading of your team, that give a bit more of a balanced scorecard, as it were, and incentivize our managers, I think, in a direction that was a bit better than what we were doing before. So I think we were hitting on some of the right things early on. So I'm not throwing anybody under the bus at our organization, or if wherever you're at along this journey, not throwing you under the bus here. And I think the reaping and sowing, I come back to that a lot. That principle is good, and I think incentivizing our people based on their performance, particularly at the management level, because they have a bit more sway over performance, is a really good thing, and I think it motivates the right kind of behavior. And I just think it needs to be balanced with other things you're measuring and perhaps incentivizing that push the vision of the organization forward. And I think when you have a good combination of those things, along with the right kinds of people in those roles, I think you're going to see success coming your way. You're going to see performance improving, and it helps drive the sort of outcome that you're looking for. And that's ultimately what we want with our comp plans. We want it to push people, to nudge them in the directions we want them to go. And so we're going to do that with our words to them, pushing them. We're going to do that hopefully by modeling it well, and then we want our compensation plans to do the same thing, to where there's this consistent message pushing them in a certain direction that's good for them, good for our team, and good for the organization as a whole. So I hope this is helpful. This is, a bit of just a reflection on where things were in the past for us and how we've evolved in our thinking on this. And I'd encourage you to be thinking about this as well, of how you may be able to improve what the compensation structures look like and how that may improve the organization and help you maintain good managers on your team. So I hope this is helpful. There's a lot more resources on this kind of topic on the website, elitebsc.com. You can go check those out. And we'll see you next time. If you found the information in this podcast helpful, please like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform that you're using. If you would like more resources or help to grow your cleaning company, head over to elitebsc.com. We have loads of articles, videos, free tools, coaching options, and a lot more. If your company is greater than $500K in revenue and you want to take your learning experience to the next level, check out our mastermind group. You can learn more about that at elitebsc.com/mastermind.